So welcome everyone to today's session of the UX Design Office Hours. Today we'll be doing a special session on tools. And now we have a very tool agnostic approach in our curriculum because we really want to focus on process, which is evergreen. Tools will come and go. There'll be new trends and, new tools that are hot one year versus another, but the process is really what stays the same, which is why we focus on that in the course. But we do realize that, of course, you need tools in order to complete some of these projects. And so that's why today we thought we'd do a special session focused on tools. Fabio just let us know a little while ago that his power is out, unfortunately, and his phone is about to die, so he might not be able to join us. He'll see if he can get his power back. But for now, we've got Emily, who is going to share her approach to tools and some of her favorite tools and tips. And of course, at any time, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. You can unmute your microphone. And for now, I'll hand it over to Emily.
Cool. Hey, everybody. So I love the approach of focusing on the process over the tools. And that's what I tell the students that I work with all the time. It's learn the process really well because you can switch tools at any time. It doesn't, anyone can learn any software program. And that's what you're kind of going to be doing that throughout your career. As different program, Adobe will sunset different things and introduce new things. So it's a constant part of the process to sort of be learning new tools and trying out new things all the time. And I always switch. Like some people have a setup that they like and they never want to change it, but I'm someone who always switches back and forth between what I'm using. I'm always trying to find something cool or new or learn a new workflow. And so I'm always experimenting with new things. So whatever works for you, I think is best. So I also have a background in graphic design. So I was, and photography. So I was trained on Photoshop, starting in 2003. So I have a long history with the Adobe suite, and that's what I'm most familiar with. And you can do UX design in Photoshop, in Illustrator, InDesign. It doesn't really matter because really, as long as you can draw boxes and arrows and add text and images and things, that's really all the requirements that we have as UX designers. So whatever you get most comfortable in, doing those things is what you should use. That's really the best advice that I can give people on tool selection. Whatever you're most comfortable in and can work quickly, and because we're usually exporting PDFs or flat JPEGs. I don't think many people share their working files as much anymore. So as long as you're comfortable in what you're working in, then that's the ideal scenario. So I'll show what I've been working in lately, the last few months, which has been Sketch. I highly recommend Sketch as a wireframing and UX design tool. I like to use it to draw user flows and wireframes and do visual design and export visual design comps and wireframes for prototyping. And then I think Sketch and InVision complement each other really well. And InVision is a prototyping tool that you can use to link together your flat designs in order to create an interactive experience and test out different interactions and see how your flows actually work on screen. So let me see if I can share my screen really quickly. And please, anyone, feel free to ask questions or pause or jump in at any time. Share screen. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah?
Yep. Looks
cool.
Great.
So this is a sketch file that I've been working in lately. And Sketch is cool because you can create artboards, many artboards in one file. So I really like it for managing. It's great for UX design because you can create a bunch of different screens for the same product or for the same experience in one file. And Photoshop, it's really hard to do that. You have to create layers and groups, and it's really, your files get really big and bloated really quickly if you try to design for multiple screens in Photoshop. But with Sketch, it's really easy to do different designs for different screen sizes, in addition to different actual screens. So this is a design for some newsletters that I've been updating at work. But I wanted to show some really cool stuff that Sketch can do. I mean, you can, I guess, a brief tour for anyone who hasn't been in it yet. A lot of the tools, most of the tools that you'll use are in this menu on the left-hand side. So it's vector-based, similar to Illustrator. It's not pixel-based like Photoshop is. So it's really great for icon design as well. You can draw really finely tuned shapes and export them as SVGs. And it's really a tool that's like built for web design, which is so awesome. But yeah, you can insert all different kinds of shapes, draw vectors. That's kind of like the pen tool, if anyone is familiar with the Adobe Suite. Insert text or images. You don't have to use artboards. You can just draw things on the canvas. But I think it's easy to get lost in the canvas without using artboards, so I like to use them. And then the layers are managed on this side. I'm not really good at managing my layers in Sketch because every object has its own layer, so it's really easy to just select what you need, and I find myself not really using the layers palette to navigate my document, which is not how I approach Photoshop. You kind of have to have a better, more managed approach with Photoshop and InDesign and things. But Sketch, I think it's pretty easy to ignore the layers palette, at least I've found. Let's see. And then when you select an object, like I've selected this rectangle here, the properties of it show up on the right, in the right panel. And the properties are reflective of how a browser sees things. So it's pretty cool to see that they, instead of a stroke, like if you wanted to add an outline to something, it's called a border. Box or drop shadows are adjusted in a really similar way that they're adjusted in the browser and in CSS. So the alignment between the Sketch interface and the way that HTML and CSS work is really parallel, which is really cool. And it makes it great for working with developers too. So I want to zoom in a little bit and show some cool things. So there's this really awesome plugin for Sketch called Craft. It's a free plugin. That's what these little, I was pointing at my screen, I don't know why. These little icons right here are part of this Craft plugin. And it allows you to sync up your artboards with InVision. So you can log into your InVision account, choose which prototype you want to sync up your artboards to, and every time you save, it will just populate that InVision project with your artboards as different screens. So that's really, really cool, and it makes prototyping things really quick. So that's part of the Craft plugin. This next part of it, I haven't actually used before, so I don't know that much about it, but it's for creating like a pattern library based on your design documents. So I haven't tried this out yet, but I think it could be a really powerful tool, especially if you're working with other people and have multiple designers contributing to a project. This one, let's see, is the coolest. So I'm going to show you this content tool. So I talk a lot about, and I heavily encourage my students to use real dummy content in your prototypes. So it's when you're making wireframes and it's a new product, or if it's something that you don't have content for, no one's written content for, or you're imagining that it's user-generated content, it's easy to just put in lorem ipsum, like the Latin dummy text, but it makes such a big difference if you actually take the time to put in more real content. So a step farther towards reality. It's not actual content that people create, but imagine what it might actually say if your project involves like a news feed or photo captions. Like, instead of doing just the lorem ipsum text, actually write out a fake photo caption or a fake status update. And it makes such a difference in people's portfolios when you see content that looks like it could be real. It also really helps with user testing. When you're asking people to react to or complete a task, it's a lot easier for them to grasp what you want them to do and what the experience is actually supposed to be if they're looking at more realistic content. So with that in mind, it can be really time consuming to go in and type out realistic content. But this awesome tool makes it really easy to do. So with this craft plugin, you see I selected a piece of text. This is like a section heading in my newsletter here. And I went into this content tab in the craft plugin within Sketch, and you can access, they have a whole library of dummy content to use. So I can click in names, and just if I wanted to change that to a name, I'll click mail, and it automatically changed in my document to Brian Jenkins. And you can do, let's see, I'm going to click all my article headlines and just click on this headlines section and change it into astronomy. And it changed the headlines to all different ones. So it's such a time saver. It's so, so cool that they have all of this content like pre-built. But the really cool thing is you can go into this little web tab, type in a website. I'm typing in the website where I work because that's the content, the dummy content that I always need to use is actual content that's on the website. So I can select this headline. If I want to pull one that's from the homepage today, I just click it in this little mini web browser and it changes to that headline. I want to change the subhead. I do the same thing. I want to change this image. I click on the image, scroll down a little bit, and it changes the image out. It's so freaking cool. And it maintains the proportions and everything too. So it's really awesome. I can't emphasize how much I love this little feature. Then the last thing that's pretty cool is this duplicate content option. Now I'm going to duplicate my artboard so that I can show you what it actually does, and delete some stuff. All right, so let's just start with just this one. So say I want to have a long list of these news items that have a headline, a subhead, and an image. So I'm going to select them all, click on this duplicate content button, click vertical because I want them to go down vertically. I can count how many I want to have. So I'm going to do 6. This one, this little input is how much space I want to have in between them. I'm going to say 30 pixels and duplicate content. And it just did it for me, which is so cool. And you can go back in and adjust the spacing on it. It's such a good time saver. So now that I have all that content, I can go in and select different headlines. It does make your layers kind of a mess. Like, I don't know if you can see over here. I don't know really how that content duplication actually works, but it uses masking and groups and stuff. So it kind of messes up the layers palette, but I don't really pay attention much to that anyway. So anyway, it's really cool. I recommend it. And then you can go in and just click to change the headlines to make it a more realistic little mini newsletter. So yeah, and Sketch is much cheaper than the Adobe Suite too. It's like 99 bucks. I don't think there's any reason to use anything else other than Sketch unless you already have the Adobe Creative Suite and like it. But yeah, I highly recommend Sketch. Let's see, what else? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions or want to see anything else in Sketch while I'm in here?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I know that you can do some global changes to components in Sketch. So you update one item and then it updates everywhere. Can you share how that works? Is it across files or is it just in the same document?
In the same document, I'm pretty sure. So that's the symbol tool. And I haven't used that very much, but we can sure try it. So let's see. I think I'm going to delete this artboard and see if we can't. Let's do it on this mobile version. So let's say this header, let's make a symbol out of this header. So I selected the entire header and now I'm going to, so I'm kind of doing this on the fly because I don't really know how it works. So please forgive me if I stumble. Create symbol. I'm going to name it something logical. Mobile newsletter header. Send symbol to symbols page. Okay. Cool. Okay. So now if you can see over here on the left side, I didn't really explain this about Sketch, but Sketch has pages and each page can have artboards and you can have multiple pages in a document. So it created a new page called symbols where the symbol I just created, mobile newsletter header, was, and if I want to make changes to it, I would make the changes here on the symbols page. So say I want to change the background to teal, or maybe how about purple? That's easier to see. So I did that on the symbols page. I'm going to save it and then jump back to my other page and it automatically updated. So that would be, if I was using, if I had done a bunch of different versions of this and just used that as my symbol, I would only have to change it in this one place instead of going into every artboard where I have that symbol to make the change. So if I wanted to change the title, I could do the same thing, change the text. Let's jump back and see. Yep, changed right here on my working document. So that's pretty awesome. That's a big time saver as well. Does anybody else have any other questions, or has anybody else tried out Sketch yet, or are you in the wireframing portion?
I'm getting close to this section, so this is really cool that we're going through this. But yeah, I had a question about, like, as far as like dummy content, can you put anything else besides, like, text and pictures, like, say, I don't know, like a video or like a animated GIF or something like that in there as well?
I don't know if an animated GIF, I always say GIF, it's the incorrect pronunciation. You are right, and no, you have the correct pronunciation, but I just haven't broken the habit yet, so.
Okay.
Let's see if a GIF will work. I think we have one on the homepage somewhere of the Tech Review site, or maybe I can just go to Giphy and see if that'll come up. Let's see. So I'm going to try to change this picture of a building to this heart GIF. It looks like it grabbed a single frame of the animated GIF, which makes sense because I don't think that Sketch itself supports animated GIFs within your working documents. But it looks like if you wanted to use an animated GIF as a source file, then it would be able to at least pull out a single frame of it. And I've tried it with video, and that didn't work. It just played the video in this little browser thing. So in that case, I would take a screenshot of the one that you're looking for, or use an image with a icon over top of it or something. Maybe build a symbol that has a player in it, and then where you could use it in your symbols library.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. I'll also show, I like to use Sketch 2 for user flows. Let's see. I'll jump over to my other screen. That works. Oops. There we go. So I like to draw out user flows that are kind of like mini wireframes. There we go. And I like to use Sketch for that too. And this is an example of that. So Sketch doesn't have to be used just for big, fully fleshed out like wireframe layouts. I think it's great for user flows, wireframes. It doesn't have to be just the mock-up stage. There are other things too that make drawing user flows easy, like OmniGraffle is pretty cool. And I know there are some web tools too that are touched on in the Springboard curriculum, but I've used OmniGraffle for that before, and that was a good, a pretty good experience. It has boxes and arrows that sort of snap together, and you can easily add text and labels to each of them. But I've definitely been on a Sketch kick lately, if you can't tell.
Hey, Emily, I wanted to jump in with a question.
Yeah.
I was at a prototyping meetup last night, and we talked about all these different prototyping tools, and we talked about Azure, Principal, Marvel, Flinto, Framer, Proto.io, UX Pin, and so much more. And it's how do you decide between all of these? Like, how would you or a design team figure out which one you want to use at your company? Because all of them seem like they have a lot of overlap in what they do. They all look really nice and clean and intuitive. So how would one decide?
Good question. I think I've heard of like one of those that you mentioned. I definitely think that like group and team account management would be a big factor in deciding what to use at a company. And I work with one other designer, and we have an Envision account, and our teammates share that Envision account so that they can see our prototypes. But the group management aspect is a little bit clunky. So if everything is pretty comparable in the actual tool itself, if it's clean and easy to use and easy to create deliverables, then I would go on like more of the administrative, or maybe like if they have good support and documentation, Like all of the other sort of like surrounding parts of the experience of using the tool would be my selling factor. Price too, of course, but that usually I would guess that they're pretty comparable in terms of price too. But yeah, I find that the group accounts are really hard to get right. So if there's one that's figured that experience out over others, then I would go with that one.
And for the course, I believe Envision allows you to do a free prototype. So if you want to use that for the course, then by all means, I definitely recommend that.
Yeah. And there's a site called Designer News that's like kind of like Reddit for designers. There's forums and there's a job board, and there's a good newsletter where they have like discounts and promo codes and stuff that come through all the time for a bunch of different tools. So I think it's designernews.co. I would recommend that. Oh no, they turned off the lights.
Awesome. Does anyone have any last questions? That was super interesting, Emily. I feel like I learned a lot about Sketch. I don't use Sketch, but maybe I want to.
Yeah.
If no one else will ask a question, I'll jump in for another question. This is the Shamila show, I guess. But Emily, I wanted to ask you about those grids that you had in your sketch doc. How are you determining those grids? Thanks.
Oh, sure. That's a good question. So the grids that's a cool tool in Sketch as well. I'm going to bring it back over. Maybe I have one set up in here. I think I do. Yeah. Okay. There we go. So I'll show you the grid tool. So the grid that I always use is the one that's actually called layout. The show grid is like the sort of document square grid that I don't really use that. But the layout grid is cool because it allows you to set up vertical columns and rows, which you can't in InDesign. Maybe you can in InDesign. I don't know. It's definitely easier to do in Sketch. So I usually figure out the width of my content or my artboard, and then the width of the content, and how much margin I want on either side. And you can set that width to align with your columns, how many columns you want. I usually base mine on a 12-column grid because that's really flexible. It allows you to go for either like a 3-column layout or a 4-column layout. And then I just find it to be super flexible. But on this particular design, since it's mobile, I collapsed it down from a 12-column grid to a 6-column grid. And then I really just fiddle around with, I'm not very precise about like the math of it. But I usually just fiddle around with the width of the columns and the width of the gutters until it seems like something that feels kind of right with the font sizes that I have set up. So I'll usually do that, and then I'll set up a horizontal grid, so rows as well, that are also complementary and kind of based off of the typography. But you can see that the rows are based on a multiple of the height, of the columns. So that's a lie, actually. It's based on the gutter. But they should have a relationship, is really what I mean. That's not built into Sketch, but yeah, when you set up the rows and the columns, they should be sort of complementary and proportional, and allow you to align things so that they look good and consistently spaced. It's a little bit buggy, this tool is, because if you don't have your artboard selected, it'll apply the same grid to all of your artboards, which you usually want to have a different one set up on each screen size. So that has taken some trial and error to figure out. But yeah, it's really easy to adjust and play around with a little bit. It's kind of hard to see actually in here. Hold on. But yeah, my screen is a little bit small, but as you adjust your column widths and things, you can see it adjusting behind. And you can see that I didn't select my artboard, so it's changing on the other one as well. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing your wisdom and great questions. And we'll call it a day for now. I will upload this recording to the online community so you can look back and know what that plugin is called and review all the tools that Emily shared. And see you next week. We'll be doing hopefully a capstone project presentation. We'll see if I can get someone to present. If not, we'll do a general Q&A session. Or if you have a special idea or a request for a session, shoot it my way and I'll talk with Emily and Fabio and we can set something up. So thanks everyone for joining. Have a great rest of the week. Happy Valentine's Day and see you all soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.